Hey guys, 1%. You heard me talk about this last week. 1% in the wake of all the YouTube censorship. Paul Joseph Watson talked about it. It's pretty scary. They're demonetizing everything that's even remotely controversial. It's just one more percentage point of people who watch the content, support the content for free. Join the Mug Club at louderwithcrowder.com/Mug Club. And if you're a student, as many of you are, at $69, it ends up being less than $6 a month to get the entire network, The Daily Show, Not Gay Jared Show, as well as this lovely hand-etched mug, hand-etched here in the United States. We can't tell you how much we appreciate you. You've seen a few commercials on this show. Really, I think only about 3 or 4 sponsors. We're able to be really limited with it, and we're able to continue putting in sketches that are funny and only picking sponsors that we really want to work with because our sponsor is you. The people who've joined the Mug Club, joined up with CRTV, you really have made this an unbelievable place for people to work. There's 11 employees right now and growing, and the biggest irony is we get to continue putting out content for free on YouTube, fighting back against leftism wherever it may lie because of Mug Club members. So it's louderwithcrowder.com/Mug Club. $99 annually, $69 for students, military, or veteran. And honestly, if you are any kind of student at all, we're going to let you slip under the radar. Ancient art of kata. We're still practicing it because to learn about other people's cultures is to appreciate their cultures. Producing in video studio, as always, with me is Jared, who is not gay. Follow him on Twitter at NotGayJared. Me at S. Crowder. I fulfill my legal obligations, draw your own conclusions. Are we good?
We are good.
I don't care that much because you're sick.
It's true.
Hopefully it's a shallow grave. At G. Morgan Jr. with us. You doing well, sir?
Awesome. Doing great.
Emphasis on the I don't know why they felt the need to do that in a lot of novellas. It was a shallow grave.
Shallow grave.
You're dead enough.
They're pressed for time.
Huge show tonight. We have Paul Joseph Watson and Dennis Prager, so we're going to skip along and get to them. I know many of you were excited, had some questions for them. Before we get to news about the mother of all bombs dropped on ISIS in Afghanistan, and we're going to talk about North Korea because they're acting up. Speaking of damage, the U.S. did drop the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan today. We don't have a ton of information right now, just so you know. We've been locked up in the studio recording some bits for you and also pre-recording for next week. So people who are watching this in a time capsule on YouTube or on SoundCloud are like, you didn't talk. We don't know yet. Sincerely, Stephen from the past. We get comments from people who listen to this 2 weeks from now. Like, why didn't you talk about this? Because we didn't know.
Isn't this podcast auto-updated by the minute?
So it's called a massive ordnance bomb and comes in at 21,600 pounds.
Damn.
That's big.
So basically the biggest bomb we have outside of a nuke. Let's be real here. They talk about how it was retaliatory action because I believe a soldier,
Green Beret, possibly
was killed.
Yeah.
This is slapping your schwanzen on the table. That's what's happening right now. Donald Trump wants to be the not Obama, and I think this is just a warning shot that we're not to be messed with.
Yeah, he's basically saying, I'm not like the last guy. You really misjudged me.
Yes.
Hey, what do we got over there? No, go bigger.
Yeah.
Let's get the biggest thing we've got.
I think that's what's happening here.
All I know is I want to watch that thing in IMAX.
I know.
I want to sit back and just let it rip.
Can we drop it like in Utah where nobody cares anyway and it's not going to have a radioactive cloud and just see what happens?
Utah is full of beautiful country and beautiful people, Gerald.
I know. I'm going to get hate
We're going to get letters from Utah.
All 5 of them.
I'm not from there, but my friend is from there. It's like,
all of my wives hate you now.
Yeah, I'm going to unsubscribe because Crowder hates Utah. I'm going to pretend like I didn't hear that one because we have some wonderful fans in Utah.
We love you.
So we actually, you said, I don't think we do have footage of the actual bomb being dropped. A lot of media, they're kind of speculating. We do actually have footage of, we do have a screenshot of the location after the bomb was dropped, in case you were so. Looks like there's a little bit of a change in topography.
Ooh, how to update the maps.
You're going to go there and see Kal-El. I'm not against this is ISIS in Afghanistan. I don't think you're going to see a lot of criticism with Syria. I don't think Assad or ISIS at that point are a huge threat. It really is more of a humanitarian effort. With Afghanistan, I think pretty much everyone is on board after 9/11. Even leftists, even Barack Obama was like, yeah, well, they said, why do we go into Iraq? Iraq didn't attack us. Afghanistan did, and that was kind of their trump card. And so dropping bombs in Afghanistan is actually kind of politically popular.
I think you get a pass.
Yeah. I think you do, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of collateral damage out there.
No.
Here's something, though, that does worry me. We've been talking about, for those who missed it, on Monday's show, we went through the entire timeline with Syria, with Assad, with the Russians, who backed who, how the conflict started, how the rebels, how ISIS was created, when the red lines were drawn by Barack Obama, when he went back on the red lines and claimed he never drew the red lines. So on Monday, we did this pretty in-depth, I think 20-plus minutes on just Syria and how it was created. I'm not saying I'm the first to do it, but a lot of people emailed us and said, hey, that was helpful. I didn't really have a firm grip on what's been going on there, and this gives me a little bit of a foundation. So go and watch Monday's show, those who are Mug Club members. But we want to do the same today with North Korea, because a lot of people aren't super aware of what's happening with North Korea. There are rumors that they could be testing some nukes on Saturday because it's an anniversary of some kind. I will say this. I'm actually more concerned with North Korea than I am with Syria. And I understand geopolitically Syria is important. And I understand the implications with Assad and with Putin. I get it. Remember that time when we used to talk about Donald Trump being a secret Russian agent? Those were good.
Yeah.
Way back in the day.
But with North Korea, I mean, even if they can't hit the United States, and they very likely can't, they can hit South Korea. And they can hit all of our troops who are in military bases around there. So, and they're crazy people. A lot of times you're like, well, they won't do it because they know there's mutually assured self-destruction. Yeah, but this is a crazy person. This is Kim Jong-un. He's not a sane human being. And I know you said they a little
bit of saber rattling. When anybody else is getting more attention than them, it's kind of
North
like
Korea
the brothers like, no, listen to me. We should just send Dennis Rodman and he'll fix it.
Yeah, exactly. That is what happens with North Korea. By the way, Kim Jong-un went to Western schools. Why didn't we just kill him then?
I don't know.
We had a chance. So what other capabilities? We don't know. Japan came out and said that they do believe North Korea is capable of striking with sarin gas. So that's getting pretty serious. We don't want to go all the way back to the Korean War and necessarily kind of China and that relationship, but let's start with sort of in modern times what's been going on with North Korea. 2005, 2006, that's when they first admitted that they had nuclear weapons, and they started conducting tests. So that's important. That's kind of the new era of North Korea and nukes. In 2007 and 2008, they shut down their main reactor, and they agreed to inspections in return for massive aid packages. So kind of like a kid who was sent to his room, but he was hungry. No, we cool, right? I didn't mean it. And came back, and they said, okay, we're going to play nice, send the massive aid package. That was 2007, 2008. 2009, they decided to renege and begin testing again. So I had my fingers crossed. Little fingers. Stop your little fingers. Then in 2013, there was the third nuclear test. They restarted all the facilities. They fired more rockets, for those of you who missed this. By the way, I should preface this. Nearly every time these tests have been conducted or they've launched off rockets or missiles, the reprimanding that has taken place has been the UN wagging their finger and putting in sanctions and then doing nothing.
Yep.
All the way back to 2005. Nothing. Zero. I think you saw that on Team America. They're talking about, Hans Brex, you're breaking my ball. So that's pretty much, if you're going, well, how do they keep doing these tests for people who are younger who don't know? Well, it's because all that happened was, I'm going to count to 3. I'm going to put you in timeout. And they just kicked their dad in the balls. And
Next
they never got
time I'm serious.
Next time I'm serious.
Next time.
Kimmy.
Okay. Let this nuke slide.
Oh, you're going to be in very big trouble, little Kimmy. So I think you said 2013. Yeah. Third nuclear test, refire. 2014. So they entered in talks to stall. They fail. New sanctions are imposed in 2014. And then in 2016, 2017, now this is where we have more tests. They claim to be able to mount nukes to missiles, and they claim that they will not. They will attack the U.S. mainland. So I get that it's kind of funny because a lot of people think, well, they don't have the capabilities. We really here's the truth. We don't know anything about their capabilities. We do know. I think it was 2005. They had a 1 kiloton bomb, and then in 2010 it was 10 kilotons. So you can see that there is a progression there, which I find troubling. And I don't think they can hit the U.S. mainland. A lot of experts, intel experts, are saying that's the case, but it is kind of guesswork because North Korea is a security state, and we don't have any intel there on the ground. But we do know at the very least they could mess some stuff up for South Koreans, who are a great ally. This would be something I'd keep my eye on. This would be something I would keep my eye on because them acting up could create a lot of instability. But you were talking about how you don't think they will, Gerald. Because
so.
It's very different with China this go around.
Yeah, they've kind of run out of friends in that neighborhood. They don't have a big backer anymore. So I think the politics are a little bit different right now. I do think that you're right. They are crazy. They can mess up South Korea a lot. And that's the only reason we haven't done anything right now, by the way. It's because South Korea can get nuked very quickly. But no. I don't think they're going to do it. I just think they're getting some attention. That's their game.
They're doing it, but there does need to be a certain point. Right, well, like we're talking about with red lines, and that point needs to occur where we go, okay, they're an actual threat, and we can't know. So I think that there's going to be a lot of guesswork, probably in this presidency, more than any in the last 20 years. I think North Korea is going to come to a head, and I think everyone's kind of been laughing about it for a while, but we'll see what the capabilities are, and if they're even remotely threatening, I think it's going to look like the ice castle.
Well, if there's any place in the world that we should be going into, it's definitely North Korea. The problem is, who do you snipe? There's no sanity at any level in the government.
Yeah,
you pretty much have to take out all of them.
Yeah, I guess. You just have to take out the entire lineage. But they do it half the time with their own relatives. So I will say this. It's one thing to watch. For me, it's something that worries me more about Syria or Russia because, again, Russia is out for their own self-interest. I think Putin is a totalitarian who kills political dissidents. I do believe that's happened. But I think, by and large, they're not looking to conquer the West. I do think North Korea would love to. They just don't have the capabilities to. But don't take your eye off them because they are very, very crafty and very resourceful.
South Korea, you will now feel my wrath as I jujitsu your own utilities against you. Bombs away! Can you hear me now? You're about to incur roaming charges.
Not a big wardrobe budget there. That one came together toward the last minute. But listen, if you give them an inch, South Korea, they will take a mile. Exploding phones belong in a novelty shop. Not with Sprint. Maybe with Sprint.
Maybe Sprint.
Maybe with Sprint and Nextel. Okay, we have to move on. We don't have a ton of time here. Islamic apologists. Did you see this, Jared?
I did.
Yes, I did.
There's a group in Australia. What is the name of it? It's Women's of something Australia. Anyways, influential political group, Islamic group, and this has been making the rounds, been very viral, of these Muslim women. It's a group for Muslim women by Muslim women. There's no lifetime for Muslim women.
Please, God, no.
You think it's bad on Lifetime?
Another one.
It's always an affair and an abusive husband. It starts off with the abusive husband.
With midgets. You got to add the midgets.
Yes.
Lifetime is full of midget shows. You know that?
On Lifetime.
Just
It's true.
lots of them.
It's
Tons.
true. They are overrepresented. That really bothers me. Well, let's go to a clip. They were explaining away how it is okay to beat your wife in Islam. These are Muslim women. Let's watch.
I want to make this point very clear that he is permitted, not obliged here or not encouraged, but he's permitted to hit her.
No, that settles it. Permitted.
That's exactly what my Valentine's Day card said.
Permitted, not advocated. You say tomato, I say beat the shit out of you. So, and here's the thing: a lot of people will just say, well, these are not extremists.
No.
These are not extremists. This is mainstream Islam. And even if you pin any Muslim down, they will try to point to an example of their holiest prophet, terrorism be upon him, Muhammad, that he didn't really beat his 6-year-old wife that badly. Here's the exact verse. I'll read it for you. He said, "Was it the darkness of your shadow that I saw in front of me? I said yes. He struck me," this is Aisha writing, "he struck me on the chest, which caused me pain. And then said, do you think that Allah and his apostle would deal unjustly with you?" So, by the way, for those who are saying, well, that's one verse taken out of context, what I would like you to do is take your Quran or Hadith and open it up to what is commonly referred to as a page. Any page.
Pick a page.
And you can read 5 pages in any direction. First off, before I move on, Gerald, because you've taught a lot about this.
Yeah.
Is this an extremist group that's outside of... we know Muhammad did this, but how common has it been historically in Islam to beat your wives?
It's very common, and I think if you have the time, watch before and after that clip that we showed, because before they're like, you can sternly warn her, and if she doesn't come around, you can deny her sex. Essentially, you won't sleep with her. Deny her sex, and then
you're holding all the leverage there, Gaddafi. You're not going to get any of these hairy paint.
That may not have been the best option for them, but then hitting her is last, and she said he's permitted, but he's not prescribed. And then right after that, she goes, "And it's such a beautiful thing." And I'm like, like, are you serious?
She said that right after that?
Right after that. It's such a beautiful
Why didn't we
thing.
include that in this clip?
I don't know.
It's hilarious. I was like, are you, that's real life? This happened?
Yeah, and where are the feminists?
Yeah.
Again, for example, out there, and I know people just say you sound hypocritical because let's worry about our own country, but this is being uploaded to Facebook
Yeah.
as a justification for Islam. It's a justification to beat their wives. So I'm not saying you have to go in and start an organization in every Middle Eastern country. I'm not saying feminists you have to start up an organization in Iran or start up an organization in Palestine. What I'm saying is when they even come into your own backyard and post a video encouraging and teaching people how men can beat their wives according to their religion. Where's Brianna Wu? Where's Lacey Green? Where's Naomi Wolf? Where are any feminists on this? And I don't mean it should just be a peep or a comment. This is something. If you want to censor the internet, how is this allowed to stay up on Facebook? We say Beyonce dances like a whore, and she does. It gets removed. But if you only beat your wife lightly, Zuckerberg's on board?
It didn't even say lightly. It just said beat your wife. You can beat her. You tried 2 things. Third strike, she's out. Sorry.
What galactical wormhole did I fall into where this is okay on Facebook and nobody is talking about it on the left?
Emma Watson was busy for comment.
Yes, Emma Watson she could not be reached for comment. It really is remarkable. And again, I always say this, don't look to the Muslim who's in your college class who goes with you to the bar because they're basically a secularized Muslim. Look wherever Muslims congregate and create power. Look at any Muslim country throughout history. Look at anywhere Muslims either become a majority or wherever Muslims even have a small portion of that country where they become a majority, as you see in the UK, as you see in France, as you see in Sweden. This is always what happens. Not sometimes, not kinda. Even when you point back to the great advances made under the Ottoman Empire, even when you point back and you try and claim that they created the modern numerical system, which is debatable considering the influence from the Greeks, even when you go back and try and claim all of these great things that was invented under Muslim society, guess what? Their wives were still getting the hell beaten out of them and it was okay. So it's always sucked. Islam is the enemy of Western civilization. Islam. Not all Muslims, but Muhammad and Islam. I think that's fair. Watch this get removed and that thing stay up. Watch YouTube demonetize this video and that one's going to have Tampax Pearl faster than you can say jihad.
Such a weird sponsor.
It's a very coveted demographic for Tampax. They feel that they've been using pads for far too long.
Oh, that's true.
Try the Pearl. It'll change your point of view. Speaking of things that really, this is just, it's not necessarily news. We have to get to Paul Joseph Watson and then Dennis Prager. Bothers me a lot. Can we stop with the female badasses?
Yes.
Can we stop with that? Do we all, when is this unwritten agreement where we all have to act like, oh yeah, I'm impressed. Oh yeah, Alias. Oh yeah, I buy that Ronda Rousey would beat 230-pound men. Oh yeah. Like if we say something, we're sexist, or if we act as though we don't want to see these films. It was Atomic Blonde now is the latest one with Charlize Theron. You can see here that the trailer number 2 was released where she beats every single man in an unrealistic fashion. And everyone tries to act like, oh yeah, see, women can be badass too. I just look at this. That's just, nowhere in the natural realm does this even occur. Oh, a front kick. Doesn't send her back. With female badass and superheroes, I get it. Wonder Woman, okay, it's supernatural. You can do anything you want with it. But just like secret agents, the whole kind of female James Bond, the female John Wick thing, it is unbelievable, and that's why you have to suspend the laws of all physics to make it seem like they could win a fight. Is it me, or like,
is that a garden hose around her shoulder there? What is she doing?
I feel like there was a meeting that I wasn't there for, where we're all supposed to act as though in the right circumstance, women can be as tough as men.
You just have to go to the right Japanese guy hidden in the mountains of some crazy mountain. And that guy will teach you the tricks to kick ass everywhere you go.
No, what you have to do is you have to run and stand in front of her and count to 3 before you actually do anything and let her hit you. Are you serious? What is he waiting on?
I don't, and I know I'm going to get flack for this because Courtney got a bunch of flack when she wrote this article. Okay, let me show you 2 clips here that I watched. And here's the truth is, I know that films are supposed to suspend reality, but not when the filmmakers go out and say, this shows that women can be badass. This shows that women can be just as tough as guys. That's the sell. That's the feminist sell. I want to show you 2 clips where I couldn't stop myself from laughing so hard it just removed me from it. That's why I can't watch this film. Let's see these 2 instances, and I'll give you a play-by-play. Okay, front kick. That's the second time she sends a guy flying with a front kick. That doesn't happen. Okay, and here, this is my favorite. Look. She takes out trained killers by hitting them with an empty high heel. When I first watched it, I thought, oh, it must be a heel with like a blade, like Austin Powers. No, she's just whacking him with a shoe like an old lady who's being mugged in Central Park. Okay, the first one where she's hitting with a heel, just to prove to you how unrealistic this is, and I don't believe me, the symbolism of the female empowerment, the high heel, the feminine, combined with the badassery, is not lost on me. I allowed Not Gay Jared to hit me as hard as humanly possible with his high heel. Watch. Okay, exact same scenario, but we removed the headrest here so he might even be able to generate more force. Jared holding the stiletto the exact same way, clearly stronger than a woman. Life and death struggle. Would this stop me? Go. Go. Come here, you little shit.
I love the noise he made. What are you related to Dow or something?
For those who can't see, I'm not saying that it's pleasant.
But you would still kill him.
Yeah, it's unpleasant. Don't get me wrong. It's unpleasant. But it's like your little sister grabbing your hair. It's like, you know.
Yeah, stop it.
And then you get her to marry an Islamist who beats her because justice is a dish best served cold. Then there's the front kick where she front kicks and it sends a guy flying. That doesn't happen. I'll show you exactly why. Again, I noticed twice we see Charlize Theron defying the laws of physics because she's a strong woman. 2 times she front kicks a guy and he goes flying. Now I want to clarify, it's possible to send someone flying with a push kick or a stomp kick, but to do that you need to be going forward to gain leverage. So we are going to allow Jarrett, again, stronger than a woman, surprising I know, he beat Courtney in the arm wrestling match. We're going to allow him the opportunity to front kick me to the chest as hard as humanly possible, as many times as possible, and I will stand, I won't take a staggered stance to see if he can kick me back. Okay, so Jared, Not Gay Jared, face me, okay? Lift one leg up for a second. Now, Edward the sound guy, come back here. Go back to make sure he's straight. Okay, now you can put your leg down, okay? This should be about the right distance. Okay, Edward, your services are no longer required. Now, Jared, I want you to, you can wind up, you kick me in my arms as hard as possible. Not, it can't be done.
God!
Damn it!
By the way, don't think that he kicked me in the balls.
I was about to say, he kicked you in
It
the
wasn't
balls
even
on the
close.
first
It was
time.
the
It was
oak plank.
close.
That's how Houdini died. And one more, just because. One more. Bonus round: the ultimate female empowerment shot. Can I, as many female heroes have done in the past, hold a man against a wall against his will with merely my stiletto? It didn't take long. Again, the laws of physics. A front kick will kick you back, and if you're holding someone again, they have a wall. They have all the leverage in the world. What do we see? Was that in Charlie's Angels, Dark Knight? I think Scarlett Johansson. How often do we see that stupid stiletto shot? I'm sitting there like he has a wall.
But it looks so good on TV. It just honors the golden mean, golden
my
rule.
gosh.
And
It's
the
so
triangles
silly.
and the
What looks good is
stilettos and-
Steven in heels.
You know, a part of me thinks that we deserve whatever North Korea has in store for us. We'll be right back. We have Paul Joseph Watson, then Dennis Prager. Ooh.
If even one more of you join my club in support of freedom, I will be forced to flex my military might and launch a full-blown missile attack. Here's a taste of what's to come, Mug Club members. Keep the change, you filthy American.
All right, I think there's a leak. I got water on my forehead.
Really?
Yeah.
No joke.
Is that or I'm bleeding from my scalp? I don't know what just happened. That totally interfered with my Street Fighter dance. I have no idea.
I have no clue where this came from. Our next guest, you know him, you love him. People were very excited that we have him and Dennis Prager on the same show. What a lineup. You know him on the YouTubes, Prison Planet, and you know he's going to be hosting actually Alex Jones' show. I believe the show there in Austin. I don't know if he'll be in Austin next week. But as for now, he is still across the pond. Paul Joseph Watson, how are you, sir?
Good, Stephen. Thanks for having me back. It's been a while.
Thank you. Now, sometimes you look like you just woke up from a nap, or is that just your thing?
I think it's the red eyes. I've just got permanently bloodshot eyes from staring at a computer for 16 hours a day, but yeah, I get that comment a lot.
You and my former Uber driver, he said he had macular degeneration while he was driving me to the airport. He's like, it's fine out here, but it's just like right here, which is what I need to drive. And so I still 5-starred him because I felt guilty not.
I mean, I've made a similar sacrifice. If I look up at a blue sky now, it's just floating black bits in my eye. It's not going well. It is degenerating in a hurry.
Well, that's because you're not supposed to stare at the sun, Paul. So okay, you've caught some flack and you've caught some support this week. We were talking about this. A lot has developed even today. With Donald Trump, you were obviously a supporter there, obviously against Hillary Clinton. I think everyone was. And you were not thrilled, tell me if I'm mischaracterizing, with his missile strikes in Syria.
Well, you know, Stephen, I've been speaking about that issue for about, 6 years now since the Syrian civil war started. I couldn't suddenly just come out and say, oh, yeah, I've campaigned against this for 6 years and said that it would be a terrible idea. Hillary wanted to do it. Obama nearly did it. There was the big revolt within the military. We don't want to be Al-Qaeda's air force. So I can't suddenly just turn around and do a complete 180 and say, now that Trump's doing it, it's perfectly fine and I support it, which is a lot of people weren't in that position after this big fallout over the past 2 weeks because their whole shtick is they support Donald Trump and that's their only pivot point. They can't pivot to any other issue. They can't really talk about any other subject. It's we love Trump, we support Trump, we trust everything he says. So they're in a bind. So if he does something that Hillary Clinton literally called for hours before it happened, in the case of the airstrike on Syria, they can't get out of that bind because their entire short-lived internet career over the past, 18 months since the Trump phenomenon arose to prominence is based on supporting Trump and nothing else. Yeah. So I understand why they can't even question him at this point. But, we don't live in North Korea. It's okay to question dear leader. You can still support him and have questions about some of his recent policies which are causing concern.
Right. I think it's totally valid. I agree with you. Even if I don't necessarily, or some people in this room don't necessarily agree with your position on Syria, they agree with the position of consistency. And I will say, that happened with how dare he? That happened with the alt-right, right? It was a witch hunt for anyone who didn't support Donald Trump. I think a lot of people thought you might be in that camp. I know that you weren't, but some people might have falsely thought that because the alt-right was, I remember even at one point I was like, well, you know what? I actually think Ted Cruz is probably more conservative. Let's attack. Let's flood the dislikes. Let's flood the comment section. And that was good money, right, for a while. You and I know this. If you 100% supported Trump for a while, that was really good money. Having a nuanced view or a balanced or consistent view was not good. I think I see that changing, though, now because just the anti-establishment angle isn't enough. So have you felt that? Have you felt some other people kind of on your team with like, yeah, I can't support this if I was against it for 6 years?
No, But aside from people who have talked about Syria for 6 years, Michael Savage, Ann Coulter, Stefan Molyneux, Rush Limbaugh to a certain extent, all these people have got huge audiences. They immediately came out and said, this is a ridiculous idea. What are we doing? Trump literally tweeted about 25 times since 2012, 2013, an intervention in Syria, helping the rebels, the jihadist rebels that Hillary Clinton and Obama helped to arm and fund. This is going to be a bad idea. Let's not do this. Let's not get involved. So for him to turn around and do exactly that, let's not forget that this airbase that they supposedly bombed, and, some reports say, oh, we wiped out 20% of their air force. Some reports say half of the missiles didn't even hit. This airbase was about an hour away from a Christian town in northern Hama that is being besieged by ISIS every single day. And that airbase was used to defend this town against ISIS. So whether it's been taken out or not, if it's not, we had the reports it was up and running a couple of days later. Other reports said it had been taken out. those Christians in that town were put directly at risk.
Right.
That normally wouldn't fly with, quote, conservative Trump supporters, many of whom are pro-life, many of whom are Christians themselves. But again, that wasn't factored into the equation. There was no investigation. A top MIT professor has come out today and said the evidence clearly suggests to him this ordnance, this munition was not dropped from the air, that it was exploded on the ground. You had the white helmets who were aligned with the jihadist rebels going in there, some of them without gloves, without masks, touching these victims. So there are numerous questions. There hasn't been a major investigation. There was an investigation of Ghouta back in 2013. The UN said that the rebels did it.
Right.
And it later came out, Seymour Hersh said that they mishandled chemical weapons, and that's what set off that explosion. So it's not tinfoil hattery, conspiracy theory land to suggest that it might be a false flag, given that all the motivation for pulling it off lies with the rebels. That's not completely
here would be my question there, then. Who created the false flag? Is that the Trump administration at that point? I mean, if we know that, Putin obviously backs Assad. I've heard this out there. I'm not saying that you're inherently wrong. I don't know that I buy it yet. I think that Donald Trump, regardless, is responding emotionally. And I don't think that's a good thing. I think he's responding emotionally, and I think it's hard to not be emotional. But if it's a false flag, who staged it? What's the answer there?
Well, firstly, when you say it's a false flag, the media reacts like, how dare you question this? Look at the dead children. Yeah, that's horrible. We're not saying that people didn't die. We're not saying that this is horrible. We're saying let's look into it. Who has the motive? Robert Parry came out, big Iran-Contra journalist, award-winning journalist. He's got sources. They're just as reliable as these unnamed sources that we're suddenly told to trust. Right. Whereas before, when Trump was a Russian agent, they were all lying, but now we have to trust them. But his sources
there's not a whole lot of Russian agent talk anymore after this. At least that went away.
That's disappeared. And that is a relief to an extent, because I was sick of talking about it every single day. It was boring as hell. But
I think
Robert Parry came out and said that his source said that there was a drone with these chemical weapons on that came from a Saudi-Israeli base in Jordan, and that they were responsible. But who knows? There hasn't been an investigation. What we do know is that Del Ponte, the UN investigator, came out in 2013 and said the Ghouta chemical weapons attack was because the Saudis gave chemical weapons to the rebels. They mishandled them. There was an explosion. Then they used it to try and sell this intervention exactly as they did on this occasion. And, that area where the chemical weapon attack happened, it wasn't a militarily significant area. Like, there were no huge concentrations of rebels in that particular area. So it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Let me ask
Tillerson came out March 31st, said Assad is part of Syria's future. ISIS was on the run. They're restricted to these few remaining areas. Why on earth would he turn the entire world against him once again by staging this for no benefit? There wasn't even an offensive going on in that area at the time. It just makes no sense.
Okay, so moving, because we don't have a definitive answer to that, right? You're asking questions, but let me ask you this question. As you've talked about being consistent here, do you find it grating that a lot of people who are in this always support Trump camp, no matter what, everything good that happens is Donald Trump, and everything bad that happens is Jared Kushner or Ivanka? Have you noticed that's kind of the new thing? It's like, well, I know Donald didn't want to do it, but this is Kushner. It's his fault. And that's one of those things to me that's just like, kind of like Trump care. They're like, oh, it's Paul Ryan care. Well, listen, Obama didn't draft the bill by himself. We called it Obamacare. The health care bill ultimately rests at the feet of the president. Have you noticed those kind of mental gymnastics as someone who's consistent, and does it get your goat?
I've noticed it among some people, but a lot of them are going further now and just outright supporting Kushner and Ivanka as well. They're just, if Trump says it's true, if Trump says it's good, it's good. So they've gone beyond that level now. In fact, there's a guy called Bill Mitchell who I've been having a back and forth with on Twitter. I debated him. He debated Stefan Molyneux as well. And Trump will tweet a picture of him having a meeting with business leaders in the Oval Office. And Bill Mitchell's response to that is, oh my God, another massive win. And it's like, it's a picture of Trump having a meeting with some people. How is that a massive win?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Not everything is a massive win.
Yeah.
It's just complete It's ridiculous.
Well, I don't even know that the Trump election is necessarily a massive win as we see now. It was a win, but we went in with some trepidation, and there are a lot of things that I think he's had a rough week, to be honest. I don't think he's had a very good week. I think he's had a rough couple of weeks. So let me ask you about this first, and then we'll go back to the Syria deal. How do you feel about this just obviously happened today, the mother of all bombs dropped in Afghanistan, since that's on ISIS? Do you have a different view on that?
Definitely, unless it comes out that it killed like 200 civilians. But we also had the incident where they bombed, I think it was the Kurds who were fighting ISIS in a different area of Syria. That killed 18 troops who were supposedly on our side.
Right.
But, in this instance, I'm glad that Trump is dropping bombs on ISIS and not dropping leaflets like Obama did. You remember that report back a few years ago where they had the trucks with the ISIS allies driving the oil, transporting the oil, and like 2 hours before they would drop a leaflet saying, excuse me, this bomb that's coming in 2 hours might cause environmental damage. And of course, they all got out of the area and no one died. So I'm glad that he's dropping bombs and not leaflets.
Actually, you're misreported. They dropped Jehovah's Witnesses who were passing out leaflets. Quick, send the Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay, I give, uncle. A lot of people don't know that, though. We dropped leaflets in Japan before dropping the A-bomb to let them know. They're saying leaflets that's one thing that people don't know. Like, there was no warning. There was plenty of warning. So leaflets usually are used to precede the big attack, which never occurred with Barack Obama. Okay, going back to Syria then. Assad is bad. ISIS is bad. They're bad people. So disregarding kind of what's more stable for the Middle East, what should the United States do? Because you don't sound like a complete non-interventionist. Do you just think that Syria is not somewhere we should be involved in? Be gone out of there like a Acme coyote, leaving a trail of puff of smoke?
I think we should help them fight ISIS and then get the hell out of there. I mean, look at what happened in Libya. I mean, I did a poll on Twitter, which is, half haters, half supporters at this point with Trump, saying, if you support the intervention in Libya, did you also support Obama's intervention and toppling of Gaddafi? And it was like 25% said they supported both. So there's still a complete inconsistency there. But no, I think we should support ISIS. Support Assad rather.
That soundbite's going to be taken out of context. This man says we should support ISIS.
Sean Spicer said that they plan to destabilize Syria like 3 days in a row. But
he is a moron. Can we agree on that? Sean Spicer is just he is barely walking upright. He's dumber than a bag of hammers. That guy has to go.
He is under a hell of a lot of pressure every day, but he has made several major errors in recent days.
Yeah.
And not necessarily, I don't think that the whole gassing thing was the biggest one. I think he literally said like 3 times, our goal is to destabilize Syria. Nobody really picked him up on it.
Right.
But no, I think it's a complete disaster. The intervention in Libya directly caused the migrant crisis. It fed into Syria. No, we should stay the hell out of there every opportunity we get. Unless it's a direct threat to, America or Britain. I mean, I've had that line consistently my entire adult life, so why would I change it now?
Right.
Trump is not Kim Jong-un. It's not a cult of personality. It's okay to question his decisions and who he's being advised by.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we had a conversation where I was more non-interventionist and Gerald thought it was time to go in. And we even had disagreements in this room. And I think that those are healthy. Final question. What about the freaky little Muppet over there in North Korea? So, he's saying that they have capabilities. Obviously, they have 10 times the sort of nuclear or chemical arsenal that they used to have. They don't have the missile. We don't know because we have no intel there because it's a security state. Yep. But if they keep acting up and they keep talking about, taking out a lot of people, not only in the United States, but at the very least, they could do South Korea and some military bases. It's an interesting question because I know you're more in the school of Rand Paul with that. At what point does the United States get involved with a spot like North Korea, who's becoming more of a thorn in the side of the free world?
Well, as far as I understand it, he doesn't yet have the capability to strike the US. I mean, if he was literally shooting up missiles, which they can still shoot down at this point, as far as I understand it, then yeah, it's a very different situation. What most people don't take into account is if there was an attack on a North Korean nuclear reactor, or even just shooting down one of their ballistic missiles, they would probably start something with South Korea. I mean, they sunk a South Korean ship, back in 2010 and killed like 50 people. South Korea sat back and did nothing.
I think they did it in 2016. It was even more recent, I think, but yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, he probably will just go into South Korea and it will start a conflict that will kill millions of people. I mean, that's what most of the experts say. So I think you need to be very careful about it. The good news is that China's come out and seems to be, more accommodating of doing something about it themselves. They've turned back I think it was the coal that they were taking from North Korea. So, but I mean, it's a difficult situation. It's very different from Syria because you have a population where it is almost, to make that comparison, it is almost Hitler, Nazi Germany, where in fact it's worse in some aspects.
Yeah, the North Koreans are terrible. If you look at the way they treat prisoners, they really are awful, very comparable to Nazis.
200,000 people in concentration camps, political dissidents.
Yeah.
Women get pregnant. The guards will literally stamp the baby to death while it's still inside the womb. Absolutely abysmal. I think there's a documentary called Camp Zone 14 which explains it. And these aren't biased reports. These are established. People have escaped to China. They've escaped to the West. They're all telling the same story.
Right.
So it's very although Assad is a dictator and a strongman, the absolute torture and terror that's going on in North Korea, I would support an uprising from the North Korean people, but it's never going to happen because they're completely brainwashed and they're starved. They spend all the money on the military. But again,
they spend a lot of it on Kim Jong himself. He doesn't look like he's missed a meal in a while. No, it's like you could line up every North Korean, and just from you could have a mile view, you'd be able to say that's Kim Jong right away because he's the only one. Oh gosh, we don't have a ton of time. We have Dennis Prager coming up next. Paul Joseph Watson, where can people best find you, or do you have any closing thoughts? I don't want to cut you off.
They can find me on YouTube. Just search for my name, or Twitter @Prison Planet. The only other thing is the YouTube issue, which we didn't get to touch upon, but that's a big deal right now. It doesn't really affect me with the demonetization because I don't make money off of it. But it's clearly the fact that the mainstream media is losing its audience. Like Fox News' average viewer is 68, CNN's average viewer is 59, sorry. So, I mean, that's why they're extremely worried about it. And the right is dominating YouTube. I said that on Twitter. Yeah. They all laughed at me. Then Vice came out and said, no, he's actually right. Conservatives are dominating YouTube. That's what they're concerned about. They're concerned about PewDiePie having 54 million subscribers and not being controlled by a media conglomerate. He gets 3-4 million views a day. That's almost equal as Bill Riley. That's why they're concerned about it. That's why they're pulling out the advertising. Yeah, well, you know what? I'd love to have you back to talk about that specifically. We've had people discuss that. I just knew that you had an interesting take on Syria. But yeah, I think a lot of people aren't necessarily aware. Karen Strawn will be on. She had a good take on that. YouTube's capital is their viewers. They've lost money, but now mainstream media wants access to the capital. And so the best way to do it is to force out the people who beat them consistently in online content. If that happens, I think it'll cannibalize itself. So I do think long-term, YouTube will probably have a rebalancing of itself. But let's have you back soon if we can. If you're ever stateside too, let's have you back and talk about the YouTube thing. Paul Joseph Watson, follow him on YouTube, even though they're demonetizing him. And we'll be back. Dennis Prager. Ooh, Dennis Prager.
I've been working with YouTube for a long time, and resistance is futile. And if you depend on your American government to save you, they have to find me first.
that was pantomime. We're getting interpretive dance here.
I got that
Our
from
next
you.
guest, I'm thrilled to have our next guest. I've wanted to have him on for a while. I am a longtime listener, nationally syndicated radio host, and of course the creator, the founder of the feast of PragerUniversity.com. Mr. Dennis Prager, thank you for being here, sir.
Sir, it is good to be with you, and you made one of our videos.
This is true. I did. I made one of your videos over there, and I believe it was about democratic socialism, and was surprised as to how well it did, because it's generally not a super entertaining topic, the democratic socialism.
But you were entertaining. We make it entertaining, and we do have a huge built-in base, so it's a good combination.
You do. It is remarkable, and I think a lot of people out there, a lot of younger people now know who you are. I think they don't necessarily know, though, that you are almost single-handedly responsible for really introducing a lot of people like Christine Hoff Sommers to the more conservative sphere. Prager University was a big platform for her. I know you've worked with Adam Carolla, so you've managed to bridge some of those divides that a lot of sort of cable news talking heads or AM radio hosts just haven't. And I'll tell you from my perspective as a longtime listener, I've always loved that you do like the male-female hour is one that I really like. The Ultimate Issues hour. Explain to people who don't know, they think of AM radio as all Republican and Democrat politics, but you're one of the only hosts I can think of who gets into, listen, you need to fundamentally think about issue A, B, and C to know where you line up.
Right.
And I think that's lost a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's really the reason, or the biggest reason, for 35 years of radio. And I think I'm the longest continuous radio show in the U.S. right now.
Wow.
And it's not a boast. I mean, it sounds boastful, but it's not meant
Slightly,
to be a
but
boast.
it's okay. We'll allow
It's meant to make your point, and that is, if all I did was news, I would not have had this success. The truth is, if I had my choice, I would do very little news, and I would only do tremendous issues. See, I'm as interested in you said the male-female hour.
Yeah.
I'm as interested in how men and women relate and the differences between men and women as I am in anything going on in the world today. Right. So, because ultimately, that's the stuff that determines things. See, you said the Ultimate Issues hour.
Love it.
Here's just one example.
Okay.
I realized in my first year of radio that the great divide between liberals and conservatives, and they didn't know it. That's what was so fascinating. Liberals didn't know it, and conservatives didn't know it. I mean, some did, obviously.
Well, yeah.
But the great divide was over this question. Do you think people are basically good? Because if you think people are basically good, then if a person rapes, murders, steals, mugs, then you blame outside forces.
Right.
Society, poverty, racism.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't believe people are basically good, then you say, well, wait a minute, you're responsible, not society. And that's the difference in a nutshell. You can almost trace every difference between conservative and liberal views just to that question. That's why Ultimate Issues Hour is so big.
It is. And, we talk about that a lot on this show, where we go macro on a lot of topics. For example, we were just talking yesterday about how capitalism, free enterprise can only, similar to your fundamental question, but we were discussing economics, free enterprise can only work under a system where people are optimistic. Communism can only work under pessimism and greed. I mean, this idea, if you're greedy in a capitalist system, great. You still don't get free stuff. You still have to do something for it, right?
Right.
And that question, too, are people fundamentally good or bad? That also goes back to, gosh, I have not had enough to drink to discuss this. It goes back to spirituality and obviously kind of how people are created and whose image.
Right.
Well, let me ask you about this, because during the election, too, obviously you had to discuss politics, but you talked about how, and ultimately you supported Donald Trump against Hillary, as I think everyone did, but you talked about how it was concerning that it seemed as though he often hadn't really considered some of these fundamental issues. And I felt that way, too. For example, issues like abortion or things. Well, how do you be 72 and switch your opinion within 6 months?
Well, the truth here was my evolution. I was adamantly opposed to him from the outset, and I wrote column after column in National Review. I have a syndicated column, and that's one of the places that carried it in Town Hall. But I said from my first column, if he's nominated, I will support him.
Oh, wait, real quick. I wasn't
once
saying you
we-
changed your opinion. I meant Donald Trump changed his opinion on life, pro-abortion to pro-life.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I'm answering you. Yes. So
Okay.
I understood that.
Okay, I didn't want you to think I was saying you
that was
flip-flopped.
No, I'm really backing up your point.
Okay, good.
That it was clear to me, or it seemed to me, he had not thought through any of these what we call ultimate issues.
Right.
So that was, reason number 47 why I found him troubling.
Okay.
I didn't believe he was a conservative.
Right.
I mean, I had 100 good reasons, but no matter who the Republican is, it's better than a Democrat.
Right.
People don't understand the threat that the left poses to Western civilization. That's my message.
Right.
The left is ultimately is a more lethal threat to the West than ISIS is.
I think a lot of people would agree with you. And, something, too, I remember back when Perez Hilton, there was the Miss America scandal, and you went on CNN to debate Perez, not debate, but talk with Perez Hilton about, was it Carrie Prejean who mentioned marriage? And it was a huge thing back then. And I remember watching you on CNN with Perez Hilton, and you were so thoughtful and you were so articulate, and Perez Hilton just kind of screeched. And I remember back then, the reaction was split among people my age who were just going, oh, yeah, I think Perez Hilton really got the better of him. But today that's fundamentally shifted, where I've noticed millennials are actually listening to what people have to say. And I think a big reason why you've actually become really popular in a lot of our circles, for example, extending the male-female hour. Third wave feminism, right? That's become such a cancer to young men that someone who speaks honestly about, biological sexual differences you're almost a trailblazer now. Traditionalism is almost rebellious.
That's fascinating to hear. This is very important for me to hear what you're saying. See, I have this bizarre belief that truth is awesome in every generation.
Right.
When I talk about male-female differences, that just a simple one, all right? Men are infinitely more visually stimulated sexually than women are, right? I mean, there are no ads featuring men's legs.
Oh, let me think. Okay, Jared, didn't you pull a couple of those in Sweden at one point? But that was in a very specific neighborhood and bar.
It was a small circulation.
Okay, let him.
Yeah. All right, no, even that's fine. Even for gays, men's legs are great. Right. Gay men prove my point.
Yes.
They are stimulated looking at good-looking men as I am at looking at good-looking women.
Right.
But it's not true for lesbians, and it's not true for heterosexual women. 100 other things stimulate them, but the visual is not the same in any shape or form. Yeah. Anyway, my point is that it's almost like, I've lived long enough to see wide ties in fashion, narrow ties in fashion. So what I do is I keep the last one that went out of fashion, then I wait about 20 years, and they're in. And I've saved a bundle of money.
There you go.
It's like ideas. They're just good ideas are going to come back.
There you go. Dennis Prager has a rack full of bell bottoms and skinny ties in his closet.
That's right.
That is well, and that's also something that's interesting. If you even look at fashion, that's something that I've studied sort of as it relates to human sexuality. We had this ultra feminine era in the 70s, right? It made men look like women, bell bottoms, narrow shoulders, tight tops. And then the 80s were a rejection of it, where women looked masculine with shoulder pads. And it's something that I think a lot of people overlooked, and particularly in the era of feminism where it went unquestioned. I mean, in my lifetime, feminism went unquestioned for a good 2 decades because people were terrified. And now fewer women identify as feminists than ever. And I think a big part of it is because of people like Christine Hoff Sommers and the work that you do. Have you gotten a lot of feedback on that from millennials or Generation Z, particularly feminism?
Well, do you know, this is mind-boggling. This year we'll have 350 million views. Wow. Which is enormous. It's beyond belief to me, frankly.
That's
huge. And do you know that according to Facebook and YouTube, the biggest single segment is under 35 years of age?
Yeah. Well, that's us. That's us too. The average viewer is a 28-year-old male. Yep. And since you work with Prager University, we've noticed a huge shift in the last, I'd say, 2 years, where things that we would say at one point, even Bernie Sanders is a great example. Pre-election, anything critical of Bernie Sanders, like democratic socialism, we would still be excoriated online. People were furious. And after the election, since Bernie Sanders has tipped his hand and he's trans this and Black Lives Matter that and 1% this, we've seen those older videos skyrocket in views and people like it versus dislike with Bernie Sanders. In the last 6 months, there's been a shift. Do you think a big part of that is President Trump sort of breaking down the ideas of political correctness, or do you just think it's a symptom of culture at large more, where they're tired of it?
I think it's both. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
We do have a few, we on the right, we do have a few advantages. One of them is, it's a secret, but every poll reveals this, we're happier.
It's true.
It is true.
Yeah.
How could it not be true? If you're a black and you think every white is out to screw you, how can you be happy? If you're a Jew and you think every non-Jew is a latent anti-Semite, how are you going to be happy? If you're a woman and you think every man is a misogynist, how are you going to be happy? But if you have a more realistic view of mankind, and in America in particular, where in fact the vast majority of whites only want blacks to do well, the vast majority of men love women, don't hate women, the vast majority of non-Jews, I can tell you as a Jew who has written a major book on anti-Semitism, that in all of the 4,000 years of Jewish history, Jews have lived the best in the United States of America. Most honored, most respected, least anti-Semitism. But this stuff now about this anti-Semitism that came in with Trump, it was all a lie. The calls into Jewish community centers, hundreds of Jewish community centers got calls.
Right.
There were two guys responsible. One was a black radical, and the overwhelming responsibility was a Jewish kid in Israel, a nut.
Right. Yeah, I know. Exactly. A self-loathing nutbag would be more of a term there.
That's fair.
Well, and you also say, you also do the happiness hour. I think a lot of people don't know this. You talk about how it's your moral obligation to be happy. Yes. And that to me stuck with me.
I am very touched, really, I am, that you I have great respect for you, that you have taken a lot of this stuff so seriously. That's I've written a book on happiness. I do the show every week for 18 years now, every week. Mm-hmm. But that's the biggest theme of mine, that happiness is a moral obligation and not just a psychological or emotional state. I owe it to everyone in my life, my wife, my kids, my parents, my colleagues at work, the guy in the elevator next to me, the guy sitting next to me on an airplane. I owe to every one of them to have a cheerful demeanor. It is a moral obligation. And do you know that is the toughest speech for high school kids to hear that I give?
Right.
That your feelings should not determine how you behave.
Right.
They have never been taught that.
That, and we're putting the porn lock on your laptop. That is a really rough conversation with a 14-year-old. But how do you, if some people say, well, first off, I think that comes from a biblical perspective, right, of love, that love is an action. Love isn't an emotion. It's how you act toward people. What do you say when young people say, well, what if I'm just having a really rough go and they legitimately are, they've been dealt a bad hand and they're miserable? How do they, quote unquote, act, happy?
If I said to them, I have a lot of answers. One, if I said to them, I'll tell you what, no matter how lousy it is, if I gave you $1,000 a day to act cheerful, you think you could do it? Of course they could. It's not an issue. People don't realize, this is argument number two, they're not alone.
Right.
They think, the unhappy think that those who walk around acting happy have life easier than they do. Hello, not true.
Right.
We all have a tough life.
Yeah.
All of us.
Well, and you know what? That was really a tough thing for me in the stand-up community, because there's this idea of, oh, I'm this miserable, conflicted comic, and I'm addicted to mescaline, and I'm on my 8th wife, and but I'm so conflicted. It's because I'm an intellectual, and we're just like, no, you're just kind of an ass. You're just, at a certain point, you're just a jerk. At some point, it's you, and that's become really popular. The neurotic narcissism in comedy, and that's what it is. Being perpetually unhappy is ultimately narcissism.
Well, going back to unfortunately, the political, if you will.
Sure, go ahead.
I believe at the heart of leftism is narcissism. How I feel is all that matters.
Yeah.
That's what they said on Yale to those professors that they got rid of. Hey, how I feel is all that matters. So there's no objective truth.
Right.
Is Yale racist? Give me a break.
Yeah. Almost the phrase sounds silly when you say it out loud. Is Yale racist? But they are saying Yale is racist. So it's almost, you can't write the parody sometimes. I mean, you have transgender, lesbian, feminist Americans supporting Sharia. You can't write that kind of comedy.
I know. That's brilliant. That is. I actually have often said on my radio show, folks, I can't think of an analogy because they've already outdone it in absurdity.
Right.
PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, just announced that white milk is white privilege.
Right.
Milk is an aspect of white privilege.
I know. We always say the joke is it's the kind of crazy that has Freud rolling over in his grave looking for a cabinet saying, I don't even know where to file this. These people are absolutely out of their mind. Mr. Dennis Prager, again, where's the best place for people to find you?
Well, PragerUniversity.com, DennisPrager.com. Just Google me, and they'll have about a year's worth of reading and stuff. And of course, look me up. I'm probably on in your city on my radio show.
That's true. And
or the app, Dennis Prager app. They can listen to me anytime they want.
There's so much. He does everything except come out and smash a watermelon with a mallet. I highly recommend reading his books, listening to his show. It's played a huge role in shaping how I view the world, and I know Naka Jared feels the same way.
Absolutely.
Mr. Dennis Prager, thank you so much. We have to have you back, sir. Please come back.
Anytime, Stephen.
We'll be back. Wait, hold on. There's music. What? Louderwithcrowder.com/mug club. You get a 7-day free trial. What do you have to lose? Nothing, you cheapskate. Go there. Try it.
If even one more person subscribe to my club to fight back against YouTube censorship, I promise I will eat Steven's dog. And you know I will.
I do this because robots apparently love this. I don't know when that happened with the robot, but apparently robots, this is a function that's patterned into all of them.
I think so. No robot I've ever met has gotten the memo about that, by the way.
I don't know, but
I don't know.
Only the people. No robot I ever know has done this or moonwalked either.
Disappointing robots.
But it have a Samsung Galaxy explode on me. Thank you so much to our guests. I really appreciate it. And, I think that actually having Paul Joseph Watson on and Dennis Prager created it made me think about something interesting. First off, I appreciate that Paul Joseph Watson is consistent, even if I don't agree with him on everything.
It's a rarity, it seems.
It's a rarity. I mean, he was against what's going on in the Middle East before Donald Trump, and he's still against it, even though he runs in the same circles of people who sit at the throne of Lord Trump. And I think I'm split on what he's done some good things. He's done some bad. Healthcare, bad. I think his emotional sort of reactionary approach to foreign bad. I don't necessarily know that I'm entirely against the Syria strike. Gerald made some convincing arguments earlier this week, but I do think it's remarkably inconsistent with what he said he thought about Syria. But he talked about that, and he talked about how it was amazing these people who were just cheerleaders for Donald Trump no matter what. And then we spoke with Dennis Prager, who talked about the Ultimate Issues Hour. And he brought up a fundamental question, do you believe that people are ultimately all good, or do you believe that people are ultimately all bad, or at least capable of bad, capable of evil? That'll shape your worldview. And I think you see that with Paul Joseph Watson, and you see that in the first stuff before the election with Trump, and you certainly see it in an era post-Trump. if you don't just take time out of your day, and I wasn't just kissing rear there for Dennis Prager, a big part in shaping my worldview. Dennis Prager, Thomas Sowell, John Stossel, funnily enough, because I was a kid and I watched when I was really young, 2020, and I read his biography, really, really young, and learned about him being a libertarian. We didn't have Fox News. We didn't have AM radio unless we pirated it from Plattsburgh, New York. And for some reason, Dennis Prager was one who we were able to hear. I don't know exactly what it was. I remember Laura Ingraham, early on Glenn Beck, and I think Dennis Prager, and Bill O'Reilly used to have a radio show. But the point is, we didn't have kind of the talking head echo chamber that you have here in the United States. And in some ways, that's created a different point of view, I think, for myself. And I think even for people like Not Gay Jared, who wasn't really super politically oriented before this program. And as Dennis Prager was saying, my views were shaped by having conversations at the dinner table and every day just sitting and I hate to use the word meditate because it sounds like tantric, yogi, new age, where people are like, I meditate and find my center. But meditate on an idea that day or a thought or try and figure out, what do I believe with this issue? And if you don't do that, and if you don't, quite literally take time out of every day, pick a fundamental issue, pick the issue of life, pick the issue of national security, pick the issue of constitutionalism, pick the issue of gender fluidity or, versus masculine and feminine sort of complementarianism. Pick an issue, pick 5-point Calvinism, but every day pick one and just go through, just cycle it through. Why do you believe what you believe? The Socratic method that we talked about, it's unbelievably useful. Just continually ask questions, because if you don't ask questions in your downtime to yourself about these issues, you're going to be asking them publicly because you're not going to know. It doesn't mean you need to know everything about every issue, but it means that you need to know what you think about that issue. You need to know what worldview you have, what values you have. And if you don't, you end up with what Paul Joseph Watson was talking about, the cult of personality. And the danger with a cult of personality, sometimes it can be a good person, but sometimes it can be a horrible person. And the worst case scenario, sometimes it can be a good person who turns into a bad person, because that occurs. There is nothing more corrosive to the human soul, in my experience, than success. I have seen people, I've had friends, I've had people who've been on this show. You know this, people who we've talked with, people who we've watched their star rise become absolute monsters. I've had friends who I knew very young growing up, who became very successful actors, who've since already crashed and burned. And that's success for a lot of people. And it's success combined with not having taken the time to establish what it is that they believe. And I know some people try and stay away from that because, that's ideology. We hear that all the time. I'm not an ideologue. I don't believe in ideology. I take it issue to issue. No, you don't. You don't, because if you look at it, if you look at each issue individually, you will find that you consistently line up with either one side of the political or cultural spectrum more than the other. That's why most people say, well, I'm a classical liberal, but I feel myself leaning more towards the right wing now. The very fact that you feel the need to issue a caveat means that you've aligned consistently with one side, and that's because, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, you have a worldview. Everyone does. Doesn't mean that you're an ideologue who's locked in your way where you cannot be flexible. There is flexibility. Intellectual flexibility is a virtue, absolutely. But it is not a virtue greater than consistency and being principled. And furthermore, being able to argue why you believe that you're principled. And that is one thing that Dennis Prager talked about, really stuck with me, and it's part of my daily routine. And so I would recommend that people going out there this week, just try it. Whatever you do, just like you work on your physical muscles, work on your mental muscle every day. Work on your philosophy muscle. Work on that muscle. Get the reps in consistently, and you'll be surprised after a week, 2 weeks, 6 months, how much more, and with how much more clarity you see the world. Doesn't mean that you're not willing to change your opinion, but that means you have to have an opinion to change. As a starting off point, hope all is well. No show Monday for Mug Club members. Easter Monday, we're making it a thing. Plus, no one here has had a weekend in, I don't know how many weeks. But we'll see you Tuesday. Thank you so much.